I'm so delighted, excited, and thrilled to have you on board, Caroline. It's incredible. I never thought that I would be working so closely with a amazing HR executive like yourself. So I'm really, really excited to have you as our first guest in what I expect would become a podcast that everyone would want to tune into to just learn about different perspectives of all the kind of roles, people, personalities, departments that we work in. I have a technical perspective into every organization, and today we're going to find out what a HR perspective is
Thanks, Tina.
from
I'm very
from.
excited.
You're welcome, welcome. Thank you. With your wealth of experience, over 20 years of HR experience, tell us about it. How did you get into it?
Yeah, I sort of fell into HR in a way. I was in administration roles that led to management roles, and they always had an element of managing people and managing systems that support people. And then I made a deliberate choice to move solely into the HR space and went back to study my undergrad degree as a full-time employee who'd been working in the HR space for a little while. And that was the time at which I basically stepped aside from more generalist management into HR specific roles
What
here
was
in.
the program? What was your degree in?
I did a Bachelor of Business with a HR management sort of focus. And finished that to sort of over about 3 years with some RPL, some credit along the way to help out.
What is an RPL?
So recognition of prior learning. So I'd
Oh, amazing,
done some
amazing.
studies, some diplomas, and some other experiences that I'd done that were able to count towards credit for the degree, so that it was not having to study every single unit.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
how long ago was that?
So I finished my degree in 2013, and by that time I'd been in HR leadership role for a few years and had the generalist HR experience before that in
That's
management
amazing.
roles.
So you didn't set off your career with thinking that you want to do HR. You were already working professionally in leadership and management roles, and one day you just decided I want to do HR.
Yeah, it was always an area that interested me. I was always passionate about creating environments that support people to do their best and creating environments in which people can thrive, because we spend a lot of time at work, and it's really important that people feel challenged and supported and feel that their contributions are recognised and worthwhile.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I know we have so much about organizations to talk about as well, but before we get into that, I'm really curious, and I think more even for myself and maybe so many other people who are in their careers in one way or in organizations in one particular role, or a more of a generalist role. If someone wants to get into HR, is business the way to go about it? What do they study? What do they change?
Mm. So many people in HR who have studied degrees either do a Bachelor of Business with a HR focus, or they'll do an organisational psychology undergrad. And a lot of people will do that prior to working in HR, maybe even a master's in HR before they start. And others will be working in the field before while they're studying or before they're studying. I think the degree only gives you the base level of understanding, especially how fast our world is moving now. So the way you get into HR, from my perspective, is just really taking on the opportunities, stepping into projects, putting your hand up for extra work, being open to work on project teams, and just to help out with things that are outside your normal day job, to give you exposure and to better set you up with the experiences that'll help you get that first HR role.
That's amazing. Did that change a lot of, if when you became HR, did you think that you were able to see things from a different perspective? Is the perspective of HR looking into an organization or a team or a project different from other people?
I can say yes, but I'll qualify that with, I think that every individual views that in their own way. So I think a lot of that comes down to your personality, to your own values, to your own the way that you look at what you do and how the world comes together. So I think from my perspective, always looking at problems or looking at opportunities from a people lens is the way that I approach it. So you tend to, um, instead of say being in finance where you might start analyzing return on investment and
Numbers.
costs and payback and all the rest of it. That is the thinking through which you process things. I think HR people, especially those who've been doing for a while, tend to always turn their mind to what are the people risks, what are the people
Absolutely.
opportunities, and how can the business support the people to achieve what it needs to achieve.
In your career spanning multiple decades, with global experience, all over Australia experience, so much in Brisbane, what have you seen change over these times in that when you're looking through that people lens? Is it changed a lot?
Well, it's definitely changed a lot, and we can blame or thank COVID for a lot of it. But I think we were starting to see elements of change even prior to the pandemic. So I think there has been a consideration that a personalized human experience is very important in the workplace, and that workplaces will not thrive unless their people do. And we have legislation now that reinforces that importance, such as the emphasis on psychosocial risk management through the code of practice. We've got additional industrial relations. We've got additional gender equity reporting obligations. So there's a lot that contributes to supporting a fairer and more consultative environment in which our people can work.
That's amazing. That's really insightful um, and exciting at the same time, that even government authorities or your people looking after people are thinking so deeply and putting legislation and policies around it. But if it wasn't for that, what do you think, employee experience, as they say, the term that we are coined or has been coined for some time now, how do you think that by itself stands, and what does it mean for from a HR perspective, from a leader's perspective, or just working within an organization?
Yeah, so employee experience is a term that refers to every touch point, experience, and activity that happens for and to an employee within an organisation. It actually even encompasses the experiences that you have as a candidate or an applicant to an organisation. So, what is it like to submit your job application? How quickly does the organisation get back to you? But there's a whole bunch of things that happen within organisations throughout the whole life cycle of being an employee. And every one of those experiences should be easy. It should be enjoyable as much as it can be. And I think that when you are able to do that, you create an environment in which your employees are going to thrive, because they're going to feel empowered and they're going to feel engaged with the organisation, and that all contributes towards the organisational objectives as well.
That's incredible. That's so nice that we are looking at from an employee perspective, and we are, in addition to the governance and compliance that we live and work in our organizations, we really want to go that extra mile from an employee perspective as well. But I've seen, when I talk to people, both in leadership and as an employee, or even CEOs, or I found this kind of split, that half the people believe work is work. I go to work for doing work. Making my life amazing is not work's responsibility. And same from people responsible for people. Work is work, and share that sentiment. But the other half is like, no, I want to work where I love working. I want to be excited about doing work every day. I want to be, thrilled to get up and go to work. Where do you see is the environment really is between these two
I think
extremes?
it's less about the environment, more about the individual, and that is the whole point of employee experience, better understanding the unique journey of every employee. So if you have an employee that is at work to save for the house deposit and just pay their bills, it's not like they don't want to have a good experience while they do that. It just matters in some ways less to them than somebody who is totally invested in, getting every drop of experience out of the role that they're doing, or meeting all
Absolutely.
of the people, or pushing their career as far as they can at that point in time. So for me, employee experience is, it covers those who are there for a variety of reasons, but the process is that the organisation can better understand what those reasons are for every individual. And so
Absolutely.
therefore the journey that that individual has open to them, that organisation, there are pathways that are more suitable to where they're at and what they're looking for.
Incredible. That's a lot of that's amazing if organizations can do that. But do you really think they have the capacity?
Look, I think this is the ideal position we want to be in. I think there are organisations that are so focused on this and do it very well. There are some that are aware of its importance and doing it to some degree, and there are other organisations that are not doing it at all. And our if our choices around flexibility, around the sort of work we want to do, all of those things that we made stronger decisions about for ourselves as a result of social change in the pandemic, we're going to choose to work for organisations that provide us what we need, where we have flexibility to do so. So I think that even if organisations are not necessarily focusing on it as fully as they should be now, they will lose out to the ones that are.
That is so true. You hear that every day that people leave for more money, people leave for a better organization, and it affects organizations when this change happens because you still want to keep going about doing your business, and if people that you're reliant on are not really as committed and are more prone to moving on at the drop of the hat, it's a little difficult to keep progressing with the momentum that you can otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the environment we're in, where we have a real skills shortage, we want to maintain as many people in the organisation as we can. It costs so much more to bring a new person in from the outside than it does to invest in those that are already in your organisation, and to support those to develop new skills to be better positioned to take on the roles that your organisation will have in the future. So I think it's very important to understand that if you're not focusing on the individual employee experience, that you will lose out in that war on talent to others that are doing the right thing.
That is so true. That's incredible. There is also the at the moment a bit of a sentiment that even though there is talent shortage, there is also lots of opportunity and lots of demand for highly skilled uh, resources and highly skilled employees. How do organizations brand themselves, or bring that high talent, attract that high talent for their organizations? And once they have secured it, how do they uh, keep that branding for the ones that they've already hired, so they would want to uh, keep going and do their best?
Yeah, it's very true that we have lots of skills missing in our current workplace. And we know that looking ahead down the timeline, there are skills that we don't have in organisations that we will need in the future. So to be able to not only retain those employees we do have that have the potential to grow, but also attract the right sort of employees, we've got to find some way to externally promote the fantastic experience that we're creating for our current employees. And that's known as employer branding, where we have somebody outside the organisation will have a view of that organisation based on what they see as an outsider. The same way we see a brand of a product or a service, an employer will have a brand. And that is based on all those elements of the employee experience, plus a whole bunch of other things, which wrapped up together are commonly referred to as the employee value proposition. So that's not only what are the opportunities for me to learn and to grow, but also what's my salary like? How much feedback do I get from my manager? How social is the environment? There's a whole bunch of things that feed into that employee value proposition. What is the value that the employee derives from working for the organisation? And so we package that all up in a nice shiny way and present it to the outside world as our employer brand, in an essence to try and attract the sort of people that we know thrive at our organisation. So just the same way that cars have different brands, employers should have different brands because they're pitching their brand to try to attract different sorts of people that will be successful in their
That's
organizations.
intense. That's
Yeah.
intense. Being put, so every organization has their purpose, has their,
Hmm.
product or
Yeah.
their market. So a lot to do with the actual development and R&D and you name it, everything to do with customer experience and those kind of things. The kind of work that we are requiring these days from a human resource function within an organization or from tailoring for every employee, how do you think we can achieve it? Do you think technology has a role to play in that?
Yes, I do think technology has a role to play, and I'll come back to that. HR is very broad, but when it comes to things like employer branding, it's one of those things that you have a brand, regardless of whether you actively cultivate it or not, because anybody can go on to Seek Reviews or Glassdoor or
So
speak to
true.
somebody who works for your
We
company.
cannot hide
No,
anymore.
that's right. And they can get a perspective on what it's like, what you're like as an employer. So the idea of HR trying to curate that or to take control of that messaging and package it up a bit more in a deliberate way, that is very important, because without that it'll just be whatever it is, and that does not allow you then to try and call out to those in the workforce that you want to come and apply for roles with you. And it also doesn't help you to reinforce to your current employees why they need to be with you as well. And when we think about employee experience, the role of technology is very important. There's a lot of software there that is helpful in us better understanding our people's perspectives. A lot of surveying software. There's a lot of AI generated software that's about social networks in the organisation. It's about providing us a whole bunch of data points to look at to make informed decisions about our employees. There's also software that is very helpful in identifying those with the right skill set in your organisation to step into new opportunities, to provide very structured feedback and I suppose performance review processes in the organization, so that employees feel that they're getting value from that process, because in the old
There is
days.
so much tech around HR and around leadership, around learning, rewards. And
Yeah.
what, in your experience, what do you think is missing from HR tech?
Look, I don't think there's anything missing. I think HR tech is constantly evolving. So if there was one magic wand I could wave, it was that the best things would speak to each other in a way that is easy.
I remember you telling me that.
Because it's difficult sometimes with a large organization. They might have a large formal enterprise system, and you get your little HR systems that do great jobs in a particular aspect. They might be great at the surveys or really good at the sort of internal mobility and the skills development. But how do all those bits come together and provide not only a cohesive network of systems, but also a way for us to gather data across all of those different platforms to pull that one view of the employees together?
Absolutely.
Because it's hard to make decisions when you're, I download my information out of this system into a spreadsheet and I'll manipulate it, and then I'll copy the data out of my survey and I'll try and match that up. And,
Good old
you end up
spreadsheets.
doing a lot of old school re-entry, and the data's only as good as the data is as
Yeah.
well. So systems that allow the data to be cleaner, easier to access, and everything is really important, because there's a plethora of stuff out there. It's about how do we take the best of it and get it to come together in a cohesive way.
So true, so true. That's there is definitely so many systems. I remember working in large organizations, and there's one system to do one thing, another one to do another thing. Then you copy one information into another. 6 months later, you do it all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. It never ends.
Oh, that's amazing. But it is so true. Employee experience is really a industry making, as well as a really organization changing terminology, experience, and trend, and very rightly relevant and important, and for organizations and individuals and managers and leaders and within HR. So thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing your thoughts and your
Oh, you're most
experience in
welcome.
that. This is incredible. I'm sure our listeners are loving it as well. I do want to change the topic just a little bit. If you could, in your experience of working with leaders, managers at various levels within organizations, um, what would you have the leaders know and understand better for people and for HR, which you believe they can do with?
Sure. So I think that it's very easy to see things in financial terms in an organization. And I think that organizations truly need to understand the value in being you can leverage as an organization when you do invest in working with your employees and understanding what they need and being very collaborative. So that full understanding of the employee experience, the process is so great for building that engagement and supporting the culture that the organization wants to build. And it's been so much more focus on culture. So I think if we could have all of the functions in an organization, not just HR, understand the value of investing in that employee experience process and supporting the culture of the organization.
That's incredible. That even to date, people probably don't have as much appreciation for how important and underlying to almost everything an organization, a business does on culture.
Absolutely. And it's always been one of those things that people have seen as fluffy or hard to articulate. And that can be the case for an element of it. But you know very quickly when it's right and when it's not. And I think there are so many things, so many elements of culture that can be actively measured and improved. I would go against benchmarking because every organization probably should have their own culture, but understanding where you're at when you go on a cultural change journey and where you want to be, and then look at where you can shift the dial for your own organization to see what benefits you can extract from that.
Amazing. So true. Well, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, I have to ask you, is there anything that you would like to share, tell, guide our audience today that we probably haven't had a chance to talk about?
I might just flag to the HR fraternity who may be listening that the RE National Convention, the Australian HR Institute National Convention, is in Brisbane in 2023. So that'll be here from the 8th to the 10th of August. And I would love to be able to connect and, have a conversation with some of my HR colleagues at that amazing event.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. If you didn't get that, it's from 8th to 10th of August, and it's AHRIA.
No, it's
No.
AHRI.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.